Hello, and welcome back to Learn the Bible in a Year for February 13th, 2026. Well, today is Get a Different Name Day, which is apparently a real thing where people are encouraged to try out a new name for the day. So today, let's share this episode with our friend who we think should probably get a different name. Today we're reading about the Exodus from Egypt, continuing that story, Jesus' death and burial, and some practical wisdom from Proverbs. So let's dive right in. And we're in chapters 13 and 14 of Exodus today. The 10th and final plague has just happened, the death of the firstborn. Pharaoh has finally told the Israelites to leave Egypt. After 430 years in Egypt and generations of slavery, they're actually walking out now. This is literally the Exodus, the exit from Egypt. Chapter 13 starts with God instituting a festival of unleavened bread and the consecration of the firstborn. This is God saying, I want you to remember this moment forever. Every year, when your children ask, why do we do this? They're supposed to say, because the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. It's built-in generational teaching. And here's an interesting detail about verse 17. God doesn't lead them through the Philistine territory, even though it's the shortest route to Canaan. And why is this the case? Because if they face war immediately, they might change their minds and go back to Egypt. God knows his people. They're not ready for a battle yet. There's certainly going to be many battles coming up, but not yet. So he leads them the long way through the wilderness towards the Red Sea. Now, verse 19 actually mentions that Moses took the bones of Joseph with him. Remember, Joseph made the Israelites swear an oath 400 years earlier, and when God brought them out of Egypt, that they would bring him back to the promised land. And Moses does not forget. Even in the chaos of the Exodus, he honors that centuries-old promise. Chapter 14 is one of the most dramatic moments in the entire Bible. The Israelites are camped by the sea, and suddenly Pharaoh has a change of heart. This is that same hard heart we've been talking about for the last couple of days. What have we done? We've let Israel go. He musters up 600 of his best chariots plus all the other chariots of Egypt and chase them down. The Israelites look up and see the Egyptian army coming and immediately panic. They say to Moses, was it because there was no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? This, of course, is sarcasm. They're basically saying, we could have died comfortably in Egypt. Why bring us out here? It's really amazing how quickly they forget the slavery they just escaped. Moses gives one of the greatest lines of scripture here. He says, do not be afraid, stand firm, and you will see the deliverance of the Lord bring you today. The Egyptians you see today will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Then God tells Moses to stretch out his staff over the sea. The waters divide. The Israelites walk through on dry ground with walls of water on both sides. The Egyptians pursue them into the sea, or I guess rather the gap in the sea, and God causes their chariot wheels to come off. Then Moses stretches out his hand again, and the water crashes down, drowning the entire Egyptian army. Here's the cultural context. Egypt's power was in its chariots. They were the ancient world's tanks, if you will. For the Israelites, former slaves with no military training, to defeat Egypt's chariots would have been impossible. But God doesn't just defeat them, he drowns them in the sea. The very waters that gave Egypt life through the Nile become the instrument of their judgment, and the Red Sea that seemed like an obstacle now comes a path of deliverance. All right, jumping into Matthew chapter 27, and we read verses 45 through 66. Let's set the scene first. Jesus has been crucified. He's hanging on the cross between two criminals. The religious leaders are mocking him. The soldiers have divided up his clothes, and now we're in his final hours. From noon to 3, darkness covers the entire land. This isn't an eclipse. This is Passover, which happens during a full moon, and eclipses are not possible during full moons. This is a supernatural darkness, a sign of God's judgment. At 3 p.m., Jesus cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He's actually quoting Psalms 22, a messianic psalms about suffering. In that moment, Jesus is bearing the full weight of human sin and experiencing separation from the Father. Some bystanders think that he's calling for Elijah. Someone runs to give him wine vinegar on a sponge. Then Jesus cries out again in a loud voice and gives up his spirit. He doesn't say what he cried, but John's gospel tells us that he said, "It was finished. The work of redemption is now complete." Now, immediately, the curtain of the temple tears in two from top to bottom. This curtain separated the Holy of Holies. This is where God's presence dwelt from the rest of the temple. Only the high priest could enter the Holy of Holies and only once a year. When it tears from top to bottom, it's God saying, "The way to me is now open." The earth shakes, the rocks split, and tombs break open. Now, I actually did a deep dive on Matthew chapter 27 on this channel, and I went into more detail about how incredible it was about the temple curtain being torn. So if you're curious about that and want to hear more insight, check out that episode. And then a man named Joseph of Arimathea, who was a wealthy member of the Sanhedrin, who also happened to be a secret disciple of Jesus, asked Pilate for Jesus' body. He wraps it in clean linen and places it in his own new tomb. This is significant because Isaiah prophesied that the Messiah would be assigned a grave with the wicked, but with the rich in his death. So Jesus was crucified with criminals, but he was buried in a rich man's tomb. The chief priests and Pharisees go to Pilate and ask for guards to be at the tomb. They remember Jesus said he would rise in 3 days, and they were worried that the disciples might steal the body and claim resurrection. Pilate tells them to make a tomb as secure as they know how. They seal the stone and post the guards. And the irony here is really thick. They think they're preventing a hoax, but they're actually preventing evidence for the resurrection. So when the tomb is found empty, despite the seal and the guards, his resurrection will be undeniable. So thanks for that. All right, finally, we read Proverbs chapter 4, verses 20 through 27. And in the context here, we're continuing Solomon's fatherly instructions about pursuing wisdom and guarding your heart. Verse 23 is the key. It says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." In Hebrew thought, the heart isn't just where you held your emotions, it's the center of your will, thoughts, and character. Solomon is saying that what you allow into your heart determines the direction of your entire life. Then he gets practical. He says, "Guard your mouth," meaning don't speak perversely. "Fix your eyes straight ahead," meaning stay focused on what matters. "Give careful thought to your paths," meaning be deliberate about your choices. And don't swerve to the right or left, meaning stay on the path of wisdom. It is interesting that he mentions eyes, mouth, and feet, external actions that reveal internal character. You can tell what's in someone's heart by watching where they look, what they say, and where they go. This isn't about legalism, it's about recognizing that our habits actually shape us. If you want to be wise, you have to be intentional about what you take in and where you spend your time. All right, and this episode was brought to you by our great sponsor, Covenant Security Equipment, which is a Christian owned company that partners with building contractors who build with safety in mind. They sell things like bullet resistant windows, secure transaction systems, drive through installations, and much, much more. If this is interesting to you, go to covenantsecurityequipment.com and support our sponsors over there. And also, don't forget to pick up a copy of the Learn the Bible in a Year workbook. I did write this book and I wrote it for you who are listening to this podcast. The book has additional daily questions and fun facts. The digital version of this book is 100% for free. You can also pick up the paperback version if that's what you prefer, both of which there is a link in the show notes for you. What was your main takeaway from today's reading? My main takeaway from the reading were just the miraculous signs that happened when Jesus finally submitted his spirit to death. The entire world went dark, even though that's impossible and there's no way that there's an eclipse. The temple curtain was torn in two, and once again, go check out the more details on that in my episode where I do a deep dive in Matthew 27. The possibility of that happening is just literally impossible. It's really crazy. So just seeing that The death of Jesus was not just this like symbolic thing. There was some real world, real physical ramifications. God expressing his sadness when his only son Jesus died for my sin and your sin and the sin of the world. Really miraculous. Alrighty, well, that is the episode for today, and I will see all of you cool cats again here tomorrow.